Alright guys, we are back for another episode of the Championship Transfer Rumour Roundup. Plenty to go through in today's video. Obviously, we're coming off the back of a jam-packed day in the Championship yesterday. Make sure to get all your thoughts on your team's performance down below. We've also got another game going on today between West Brom and Bristol City as well. In tomorrow's video, we'll be discussing all those games in a little bit more detail when we do our Boxing Day predictions. But for the purposes of today's video, we'll be focusing a little bit more on the transfer market, which will be opening soon. 400 likes on today's video would be massively appreciated, but let's just jump into it. And we'll have to start out with some managerial news because Oxford United have gone ahead and hired Gary Rowett. Obviously, quite an unpopular, surprising decision at the time to get rid of Des Buckingham, but they brought in the very experienced Gary Rowett, and ultimately, if Oxford survive in the Championship this season, this appointment of Rowett will have been vindicated probably. I think that is the aim for Oxford this season. Obviously, someone with plenty of Championship experience, albeit did oversee Birmingham's relegation to League One last season, but came in very late in that sort of interim role, didn't he, while Tony Mowbray had to step aside. I do think Rowett will get Oxford competitive this season, but that bottom three in the Championship I still think is really hard to call. I think a lot of teams are in the mix for the bottom three right now, and depending on who Oxford potentially sign in January could make the world of difference to them. But Oxford fans, I'd be interested to get your thoughts on that appointment down below. And some good news for Sheffield Wednesday fans is that Danny Rowett will be staying at the club. Obviously, at one stage he was the favourite for the Southampton job, but the Saints have since gone in an opposite direction, and Rowett has very much doubled down on his commitment to Sheffield Wednesday. Instead, Southampton going to appoint Ivan Juric, but I think it is worth noting, I think we all expect Southampton probably to be relegated this season, regardless of the managerial appointment they make. And there's every chance that come the end of this season, and potentially going into next year, where we think Southampton will more than likely be playing in the Championship, there's a very good chance they'll be on the lookout for a new manager then as well. So at the end of this season, I wouldn't be totally surprised if we find ourselves in a similar situation, and once again Southampton are being linked with Danny Rowett. But Sheffield Wednesday, I think this will come as a massive booster to them, obviously coming off the back of a good result over the weekend as well. Danny Rowett's there to stay at Wednesday, and I think every Wednesday fan has to be buzzing with that. We have had a bit of news on Millwall as well. As of recording, it is Alex Neil who is the favourite to take over at the Den. Now, to be honest, it's not an ideal time to be looking for your next manager with how many games are coming thick and fast in the Championship right now over this festive period. The timing of Neil Harris leaving the club isn't exactly brilliant because any new manager going in there isn't going to have a lot of time to work with the players, get his ideas across, because there's just so many games coming up over these next few weeks. But Neil's the favourite right now. Millwall fans, I'd be interested to get your take on that one down below. It does feel like Alex Neil's managerial stock has fallen off quite a bit over the last 12 months with how things at Stoke ended. Speaking as a Preston North End fan, I've still got a soft spot in my heart for Alex Neil, regardless of the way he left Sunderland. Did a very good job there as well. I truly think that Millwall could do a lot worse than appointing someone like Alex Neil, albeit it's probably not the most inspiring of appointments given how his tenure at Stoke went. But overall, kind of thinking that a manager like Neil, how he likes to set up, is fairly well suited to that group of players at Millwall. And we also had a done deal go through in the Championship the other day as well, because Eric Peters signed for Luton Town on a short-term deal. He had been a free agent since his contract had run out at West Brom over the summer. Obviously, the transfer window isn't open right now, but clubs are still free to sign any free agents should they choose. And going into the January window, there are still a number of players who are without a club and who have been without a club all this season. So be interested to see if any more of those get picked up, but the very experienced Eric Peters has gone in at Luton to add a bit more depth there. But now, without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the transfer rumours. Now, a couple of months ago, Sunderland were linked with Jordan Henderson. He wasn't playing that much at Ajax at the time, and it was floated that Henderson could be looking to return to England. A few Premier League clubs had been sniffing around, and Sunderland had also been mentioned, obviously, with Henderson starting his career at the Stadium of Light. That's where a lot of the links came from. However, since that point, Henderson has been playing a little bit more regularly at Ajax of late, and Henderson has since commented on the rumours linking him with a return to the Stadium of Light, and he's basically come out and said that no, he's happy at Ajax for the time being, and that any such move doesn't seem to be on the cards anytime soon. So while it was a bit of a romantic thought at the time that maybe Henderson could be making a return to Sunderland in January, going off Henderson's words, that doesn't seem to be the case right now. But speaking of Sunderland, one player who could potentially leave in January is Dan Ballard, who's attracting a whole lot of Premier League interest right now, with the likes of Wolves, Brighton, Aston Villa, Crystal Palace, Fulham and Newcastle all being linked with the Sunderland centre-half. Now, I've been a big fan of Dan Ballard for quite some time. I think he's proven to be a really good signing for Sunderland. He's had a few big injuries over these last few years, but when fully fit, I think is one of the best defenders in the Championship, and as of right now, it seems like a lot of Premier League clubs have taken notice of that. Now, the good news for Sunderland is that he is on a long-term contract. He's under contract at the Stadium of Light until the summer of 2028. It feels like Sunderland have the majority of their key assets tied down to long-term deals. So if he was to leave in January, if a bid was to come in, they wouldn't be under any sort of pressure to sell, and they're in a very good situation when it comes to dictating his actual market value. But with a lot of Premier League clubs interested, yeah, it'll be interesting to see if any of them do go in with an official bid in the January window. Now, on this series over the last few weeks, we've spoken about Leeds United forward Joe Gelhardt quite a few times. A number of Championship clubs have already been sniffing around. Rangers I've seen linked at one point as well. Well, Wrexham are now the latest club to throw their hat in the ring, is interested in the young forward. Now, last time we spoke about Wrexham's interest in Patrick Bamford. While Bamford's not been a regular starter for Leeds this season, I think a move to Wrexham was always going to be a bit of an ambitious idea for the League One club, especially with the sort of money that Bamford is currently earning. But a move for someone like Gelhardt, I think, is a realistic one for Wrexham, who, you know, let's face it, have one of the biggest budgets in League One. I think to a player like Gelhardt as well, they could be quite an attractive proposition to join right now. They're in a promotion hunt in League One, tend to score a lot of goals. Even if it's just a loan move until the end of the season, you can see him getting on quite well there, can't you? But there's going to be a lot of interest in January. I suppose it depends what the player fancies really, whether he wants to stick in the Championship or get guaranteed minutes, maybe at a club like Wrexham in League One. I think that Norwich fans thought it would be inevitable. There would be some interest in Borja Sainz heading into the January window. He's been arguably the best player in the Championship up until this point. Norwich's best player, certainly in terms of goal threat. He scored some absolute worldies so far this season, and now some clubs from around Europe have started to take notice. The most prominent links to Sainz of late have probably been with Galatasaray. Those links to Turkey have dated back to around about November, when I first started seeing some reports of interest. Obviously, Galatasaray do have a history of poaching players away from Norwich City. They signed Gabriel Sara over the summer, didn't they? And he's done fairly well since making that move to Turkey. He's got 2 goals and 5 assists so far this season. But for the sake of Borja Sainz, he is under contract at Carrow Road until the summer of 2026. Norwich fans, what's a realistic figure that you think he's worth right now? And I mean, if you were to sell him, do you feel like that would be you waving away any top 6 hopes this season? Let me know down below. There have been reports of Bayern Munich being interested in Burnley winger Luka Koleosho. However, Bayern wouldn't be interested in doing any deal in January. Instead, this would be pushed back to the summer. And I mean, it's an interesting one. You can tell there's a good player there, but in the Championship this season, I definitely don't think that Burnley fans have seen the best version of Koleosho. His end product certainly hasn't been anywhere near as good as probably a lot of people think it could be. But he's 20 years old, still developing, and obviously someone that Vincent Kompany still rates highly from his time working at Burnley previously. Now, the winger is under contract with the Clarets until the summer of 2029, and so they would be in a decent place to dictate any sort of price tag for him. There have been reports over the past few weeks of Bayern Munich being interested, like I say, in a deal next summer, but come the end of the season, it'll be interesting to see if Bayern are still willing to pull the trigger on that sort of deal. We've seen a number of Championship clubs being linked with Wolves midfielder Luke Kundle, with the likes of Preston, Swansea and Plymouth all said to be interested. He's not featured for Wolves so far this season, and it does seem like the Premier League outfit are willing to greenlight a loan move for the second half of the season. Now, Kundle is someone who we've already seen plenty of in the Championship. He's already got 76 Championship appearances under his belt from his loan spells previously with Swansea, Plymouth and Stoke City. During his time in the Championship, I'd probably say he played his best football with Plymouth during the first half of last season. Obviously, quite controversially, he was pulled out of Plymouth halfway through that campaign and then spent the second half of the season out on loan with Stoke to stick with Steven Schumacher. But interesting that Plymouth are interested in bringing him back along with Swansea. Given his lack of game time for Wolves, I wouldn't be surprised if the club were willing to sanction a permanent sale at some stage. He is under contract until the summer of 2026, but a loan deal for the second half of this season with the view to make it permanent in the summer, I could see that happening. And another day goes by and we are seeing Melia being linked with yet another top 6 club. It's now Man United who are supposedly interested in the Leeds United shot stopper. Last time we spoke about Arsenal's interest in the goalkeeper. He's already had plenty of interest from abroad as well. Well, the Red Devils are the latest club to throw their hat in the ring as they're looking for a new long-term backup goalkeeper, as Bayinda, who they've got in there at the moment, doesn't seem to be fancied by Ruben Amorim. Listen, we've spoken about Melia quite a bit on this channel over these last few weeks. It's clear that a number of Premier League clubs do rate him as a backup goalkeeper. I still think Leeds could find an improvement in terms of a pure shot-stopping keeper, especially if they are promoted to the Premier League this season, going up to the Prem next season with how many shots they could potentially face if they do get up. I do find it interesting though how many Big Six sides are seemingly interested. Well guys, that will wrap it up for today's video. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you did go on to enjoy, make sure to leave a like and get all your thoughts on the latest transfer rumours in the comments down below. Plenty going on in the Championship right now. I'll be back tomorrow with my Boxing Day score prediction, so make sure to go ahead and stick around for that. But apart from that, thank you very much for watching guys, and I'll see you all in the next one.